So yes, this is my most epic project yet. Hi, I'm Dan, and you found Therapy Woodworks, the funky little wood studio where my wife keeps me locked up all day while she's at work. Today's video, you will get to see me complete the epoxy river top, part 2 in the episode of videos pertaining to my wet bar build. You'll also get to see a strange man dancing with his clothes on while slopping paint. Dan almost loses a finger, and something goes wrong. The first step in creating an epoxy river was to cut the 4/4 black walnut live edge slabs in half, utilizing my newly acquired Craig track saw. Well, that's how they started. Cut them down the middle, and we're just going to swap them over. I can maneuver this until I find about the right river section that I want. That looks kind of good and kind of okay. And then this is a little template that I made. This is going to be the amount, the dimensions that I need for the top, so I can make sure that I have enough material and I can look at it. If I'm happy with that, I can just make my marks and cut it, and I'll be done. Hey, we're all ready to go with an epoxy pour, a little slight different one than I did with the drawer fronts that I've already created. I'll put that a link to the video down in the description. These are the drawer fronts, and we filled on the outside the last time, poured it in a form. This time we're doing a river type fill instead of a perimeter fill. So 2 parts of part A, 1 part of part B. You mix that up all well, good and thoroughly. And then when you think that you've got it all mixed, mix some more. Okay, here we go with our initial test pour. Like I say, I'm just putting a small amount in the bottom right now, just so that I can see if there is any leaks. I'd rather see that now than later. This is kind of a bit of a pretty intricate form, as you can probably see. It's just because I know that I'm going to have to leave it in this form for like 3 days. And so I've got it trussed up pretty good. And I've got levels all over the place. And I've got it shimmed all over the place, just to make sure that I can make adjustments on the fly if I need to. The unfortunate part about it is that leaks have a tendency to show up well into the pour. I can't see any reason right now not to carry on, so I'm going to carry on. I got it all filled up, it's all poured. Looks like it's sitting pretty level. I just got to go through and pop the bubbles now. My favorite part, actually, popping bubbles. This is looking pretty good. I like it. Once the epoxy was cured, it was time to cut the 2 slabs into 6 sections. The cuts were of 90, 45, and 22.5 degree angles to accommodate the multiple levels of the top. The sliding miter table assisted greatly with this task. I was somewhat nervous at this point because the angle transition piece was fairly small and had to be cut to a precise length, as I had barely enough material to work with. Because I am making a weak end grain glue joint, I opted to use domino joinery to add strength and maintain reliable alignment during the glue up process. You gotta love dominoes, they're so quick and easy. Uh-oh, I have a bad gap issue. Let's see if I can explain this on SketchUp. When you cut a straight flat board on the table saw, you typically get a very uniform length of board, no matter what the blade angle is. However, if your blade is at an angle, as in this case, in the case of when I cut my top pieces, the length of the cut can change if the thickness of the material changes. This happens because the top of the blade is further away from your fence or stop or whatever device you are using than the bottom of the blade is. This makes common sense. And in this case, there's a 9mm difference in the length of the board, which you can accommodate for by moving the board closer to the blade. Unfortunately, my top had a slight warp in it after sitting over the long hot summer. If we establish an imaginary saw surface, you can see that the middle of the board is essentially thicker than at the edges. As I guess you could figure out, the middle of my boards ended up slightly longer. This was due to the contact point with the saw blade being higher on the blade in the middle than at the edges. In this case, it was a 2mm difference, which showed up as a 2mm gap at each end of the surfaces to be joined. I was successful at adjusting this gap on the jointer set to 22.5 degrees. This was a very risky and dangerous as I was cutting end grains which tore up my test piece significantly. I was mostly prepared for this by using a backer board. This also came with some risks. As you can see, it kicked back fairly hard. Everything worked out in the end. Hey, I think we got this here figured out, this joint. That was pretty scary on the jointer over there, but we got her done. So we've got domino holes. Some narrow ones here and some wider ones in the board itself. So it's glue up time. So like all the other glue up times, is basically we are going to put some glue in the holes, dominoes in the holes. Dominoes in the holes straight. Put some glue on the board and on the dominoes. This time I'm putting extra glue on here. There's a reason why. So I got this gap fitting pretty darn close and pretty darn good. Make sure that I'm going to get squeeze out. Yep, I want squeeze out in this case. They should squeeze together. Okay, adjust this over a little bit. I'm actually lining up the epoxy river more than anything. Okay, so the other thing that I did was I glued some strips on the bottom that will act as a gluing strip. That all went horribly wrong. These little tabs that I had put on the glued to the bottom surface there broke off. I couldn't put enough pressure on it. However, when life deals you lemons, you grow a lemon tree. Anyways, so what I did was I basically put the clamps on, clamped it to the actual bench, put a dog in the end of it, and another clamp over the top, and it's sucked it up quite tightly. Now, I know that this was not a absolutely perfect gap. I got glue in there. I got a ton of squeeze out. I'm just going to take some 100 grit sandpaper that makes a lot of dust and sand it. And if I'm right, a lot of, clean off a little, the dust will go into the teeny tiny little gap and completely fill it. Used this trick before and it works really, really well. Pretty eventful day today, a pretty important day. This is when we're going to make the cabinet and the top, which is currently not attached, all one piece. So there's been some trials and tribulations along the way here. A lot of trials. I've had to switch my thinking between cabinet maker and furniture maker because a furniture maker doesn't end up using imitation press wood walnut as a filler material, whereas a cabinet maker would. I ran out of walnut and I can't exactly run down to my corner store to go get some, so that's all I had left over and that's what we're using. What I have already tried is actually thinking like a cabinet maker and tried to glue the top on using a 5-minute epoxy attached to the press board, because the press board, you can't really machine it. I'm very afraid to put a domino in it, and you can't screw into it. It just shatters and falls apart. So glue, because cabinet makers use a lot of glue to secure stuff, especially countertops. Anyways, I failed dismally. It doesn't work. So I've come up with an alternative. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a adhesive sealer on top of the pressboard wood. And I've also installed these little blocks that I've made. These little blocks they're hickory, and they've got little angle brackets. So as far as securing the top permanently to the cabinet, we're just going to use some screws, some angle brackets. That will also allow enough wood movement for when the black walnut wants to move a little bit, even though it's going to be in the house in a pretty much controlled environment. We still get 10-degree swings between summer and winter, so from 30 to 20 degrees. So this will allow for some movement in the wood. It's not designed to be a really strong anchor, but the two together, using the sealer adhesive along the edge here as a chemical bond and using a few screws just to hold the top in place, will more than secure the top. It's going to be a fixed item. It's a cabinet. It's stuck to the wall. We're never ever going to pick it up and move it. I do believe the first step in this process would be to get a generous bead of very thick sealant / adhesive in place, although I really don't know if that'd be the first step. I am making this up as I go. And then we'll take the right wing and gently lower it into place in about the right spot. Now I know it's the right spot. It looks nice. Okay, we've got a little bit of overhang on the front. We'll do the same again on the left wing. And put the left wing in place, but this time we'll actually watch what we're doing as we put it in place. You don't have to shift it that much. Okay, that's looking perfect. Okay. Now, I'm not cinching anything down yet. I'm not going to screw it down, because the most important thing is this spot right here. This has to line up properly. So we're going to go ahead and put the top on. Align these two, put some glue in the middle, and we'll go from there. And now, for what I suspect is going to be the most grueling part, putting the center section on. So, I've got marks over there, and marks over there that need to line up just so. And we're there. And we're there. Okay. So, it's all sitting in the right place. I just need to get these two spots clamped. It's the only two spots that matter. I just need to get this joint real pretty. So we're going to put a spot of glue in here. Lift up on that just a little bit. We'll squeeze some glue in there. A copious amount of glue. I don't care where it drips. And then we'll use a spreader to get it way in there, so that we have lots of glue actually in the joint. Oh, I got lots of cleanup to do. Screwed in place, and that's screwed in place. I can use a clamp like I have on the other end and just put a gentle bit, just a gentle bit of pressure on here. There we go, last of the screws. Everything going swimmingly well. Voila, we did it. Everything seems to be working well. Happy. Okay, here we go, we're ready to go with the coating of our Osmo Pollux oil. So this is going to be the first coat for the top. The cabinet's already had one coat, so we're going to be using a slightly different process. With the top, we're just going to brush it on, let it sit for a couple minutes and wipe it off. We will do a second coat in 24 hours on the top. Following this process, away we go. Let's hit her up. All right, first coat, first thing I do, clean my stir stick. And then, with the brush, work it into the pores. Going with the grain, it doesn't matter. Yep, I know, change of grain direction here, because I put a little insert in, and that has to do with when you get served lemons, make a lemon tree. Ooh, and I have to tell you, this is a pretty beautiful lemon tree, if I do say so myself. So that's my process. I'll bring you in when I'm done. Don't be afraid to give it a good rubbing, because the more you rub, the more the wax shines up. The wax aspect of the oil part of the product. Kind of like the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. Hey, looking good. That's the first surface done. Finish up the rest. Here we are, last coat of Osmo Pollux going on. I do it a little bit different. First coat I brush on and wipe off, and so we give it a stir, and just take some of the goodness, slop it on there. Slop it all over. It doesn't really matter how neat you are, because we're going to come along with sander with no dust extraction hooked up to it. Ask me how I know not to do that. I have a hose full of goo. Rub it all around. Spread it all around so that when I actually turn the machine on really low, it doesn't spray all over me. It's also a good thing to wear some older clothes too, that you don't mind getting a little bit of splatter on. So that little bit that I put on there is probably more than enough to do half of this top. Away we go. Oh yeah, we might want to increase it a little bit. So it warms the Pollux up, warms the surface up. Disco lights in here. And really helps the Pollux to penetrate into the surface. Gives it a little bit of polish, and it kind of rubs the wax to a bit of a sheen. All right, I'm going to do the whole thing and then let you guys have a look and change the battery in my light. Nooks and crannies are more tedious than I thought they would be. Lights. Apparently I have to go fast now because my light's going to turn off.